Hi everyone, welcome back to Serger Tip Clips. I told you before in my previous tip clip for the little zipper mini pouch that I might have one more gift idea, but this one is good if you want to give it as a gift, but you know what? It's going to be beautiful for you too. And this is a present from me to me, actually. But it might look like it's going to take more time than it does because I have a semi-production way of doing these. And these are these beautiful placemats. Let me just get them in the camera. And they're surprisingly quick and easy to make with the method that I'm going to show you, where you're going to create two at a time. You could even do three at a time the way I'm doing, but for the camera and for this tip clip, I did two at a time, and I made 4 placemats in less time than it typically would have taken to make two the traditional way individually. So I'll show you some tips and tricks on that too. Now, this is also a great scrap buster because all of the fabrics that you see on the placemats were things that I had in my stash. I didn't have a lot of anything in particular, but I had enough to make 4 of these placemats. But you see quite frequently in a lot of the home decor magazines where people mix and match tableware. So even if you didn't have enough, say you wanted 4, 6, maybe even 8 of placemats for dinner or breakfast or lunch, and you didn't have enough of one or two particular fabrics, mix and match them. If they're all on a holiday theme, why not? They're pretty and it makes a very interesting looking table set too. So I'm going to show you that. Now on this, let me show you up close. You'll see I have my favorite stitch, the 2-thread reverse flat lock. But I wove ribbon through mine, but if you're really short of time, the ladders by themselves are just beautiful with decorative thread. So you wouldn't even have to bother with that. And one other little trick that I thought of as I was making these, because you're cutting 2 or 3 together, you're going to have one long strip of fabric. Guess what? If you didn't have time to finish them into placemats, make them into a table runner. So let's go over to the table and the machine and show you what I have. Let's look at the components for production sewing 2 placemats at a time. The center printed panel is about 14.5 inches wide by 30 inches long. The 2 red side panels are 2.25 inches wide by 30 inches long, and the back print fabric is 30 inches long by about 18 inches wide. Any excess will be trimmed off with the finishing edge stitching on the serger. There is also a fusible fleece that is fused to the wrong side of the top of the placemats, also 30 inches long by about 18 inches wide. Before I start the construction, let me give you my machine setup. I'm set on stitch number 11, 2-thread flat lock wide with my left overlock needle, and I have in a 9014 top stitch needle because I have 12 weight glamour thread, which is a metallic 12 weight thread in the eye of that needle, so I need the bigger eye. I have serger cone thread in my lower looper. I have my upper looper converter hooked into the eye of the upper looper because there's no thread in there. My stitch width or cutting width is on 9. I want nice wide ladders because I want to weave ribbons through the ladders. And I have my little MTC dial, which is the micro thread control, up to +2. And that just gives the ladders a scooch more room because it loosens up the looper thread just a touch. And it's a nice thing to do because it does widen out those ladders. I've tested the position of my seam guide, and I'm just going to trim off the whiskers or maybe a hair more of the fabric as I attach the red borders, the side borders, to the body of the placemat fabric. I'm not bothering with any pins or clips simply because I've got my seam guide on, and This is only about a little over a 2-inch border, so I think it's pretty easy to control. And plus, this seam guide is fantastic for that. So long raw edges are even with each other, and I'll hold my thread. Always a good idea when you've got thicker thread in either the needle or your loopers. And let's get going. The seam guide is really nice when you're doing long pieces that you want to stay uniform, because it just makes it super easy. Okay, so one long edge is stitched. I'm all set up for my second side. I'm just going to repeat what I did on the first side, and I'll show you at the table what it looks like. I have my fabrics layered together just like a quilt sandwich. I have my top, a lightweight batting in between the layers, and my backing fabric. And I've just put a few of my magic pins in to hold everything in place. Right at the center, I've drawn a line where I'll just cut this in half. And I'll do that right at the serger with my decorative stitching to go along with it. So you can see how this saves a lot of steps as I go, and again, saves time. So let's go over to the machine and start the twice as nice edge stitching. Before I start stitching, let's look at the setup for the twice as nice stitch. I'm on stitch number 3. It's a 3-thread overlock wide with the left overlock needle in. However, I want to turn the 3-thread wide into a twice as nice stitch. So I have the left needle default setting tension for that with serger comb thread in the needle. The upper looper I've cranked up to 6.7 for the tension because I want to pull the lower looper thread up to the top of the fabric so that it shows, and we have 2 bands of color. And the lower looper tension I've left on the default setting of 4. My stitch length is 1.3. Again, my differential feet I don't have to play around with is on 1. So I do have a full tip clip on the twice as nice stitch that explains how it's done, how it works, and how you can manipulate the width of the bands. I have my cutting width on 9. I've put my MTC dial back to 0. I just want to leave that on the default setting. And I have my seam guide on, and it will just probably skim off a little bit of the excess fabric. I cut the backing fabric wider than the top fabric, but that will trim that off. So let's get started. Okay, let's see how this looks. I'll hold on to my thread chains in the back of the foot. You always want to do that with the decorative threads so that you don't get stitch stacking or that big glob of thread at the beginning. Let me just pull on that a little bit more. Make sure it's in good shape, okay? And I just love this stitch for all types of projects. And you can see how we're getting that double band of color. The inside band is always your upper looper thread, and the outside band is the lower looper, and you can see how that looks on the back side of the fabric. Now, actually, I might tick up my needle tension just a little bit, just so it doesn't look strained on the back. Let's see how that does. But if you forget to do that, it's not a big deal because it is the back of the placemats. I just love this. I think it's so pretty and it makes such an elegant start. Okay, so my needle tension I brought up to 4.9 and that's better. I might bring it up one more tick to 5 and let's see how that does. It's not changing what the front looks like, so it's fine. Take out another pin and keep going. Okay, one long edge is done. So that's great. And you can see how pretty is that for the edge of this placemat. I'm going to do the second long edge and I'll be back. I just finished my second edge and I'm going to bring this over to the cutting table so we can take a look at it. Both long edges are finished with the twice as nice stitch, and let's bring this in. I've taken out all the pins. But take a look at how pretty an edge that makes. And this is the line that I drew in the center. And I'm going to measure out to either short edge 14 inches because that's about as big and as wide or deep as I want the placemat to be. So that'll be a nice size for a place setting. I'm measuring out actually about 14 1/8 inches to the edge, and I'll draw that line now, just skim off the excess length of this. And that little extra 1/8 of an inch will give me enough to skim off the whiskers and get a nice clean edge and keep it at 14 inches. I've trimmed up my placemats and I've cut them in half, and now I am ready to do the final step and finish the crosswise direction on these with the twice as nice stitch. So again, I'll hold on to my thread chain to make sure that we don't have any stacking. I'm going to move this in just a hair. Just skim off probably about a 1/16 of an inch of the edge. That's what I had in mind. Okay, good. And I'm going to bring my seam guide in too. Okay, ready to roll. I'm going to bring that seam guide just a smidge closer. Okay, one long edge done. Here we go. Looks good. I'll do the other edge and we'll have the big reveal. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that gives you some inspiration for some last minute gifts, whether it's to family or friends or even for yourself, as mine is. And have a wonderful, safe, happy holiday season. I hope that 2023 is a very creative and wonderful one for all of you. Thanks for joining me this year on all of my Serger tip clips. I've really enjoyed working with all of you on my Zoom classes, and stay tuned for more in 2023. I'll be doing some virtual classes as well as in-person classes. So happy sewing and serging. Have a creative 2023. Thanks so much. See you soon.